Okay, so I want to talk to you briefly about the making of a football team. Not something that's easily done. Some people are very good at it, some people think they might be very good at it, most people are poor at it. Sean Boylan was pretty good at it. Sean managed two main football teams, the 1980s team and the 1990s team. One of the greatest managers in Irish sport. He was one of those men who possessed magic dust. I mean that. You don't need too many people in your life who have magic dust. Sean Boylan had it. Here he is, host.
Manager there, Sean Boylan, and of course Sean Boylan, the affable coach from Dunboyne.
I knew I was just Sean Boylan. That's all it was. I couldn't be anybody else. I couldn't be Mick O'Dwyer. I couldn't be a Kevin Heffernan. I couldn't be a Eugene McGee. I had to learn to be a leader. For me to sit here in front of you and to talk, like, this is the guy that would have been sitting in the corner for so long. Did you ever feel you were never sort of good enough? In many ways I was cut into a Chinese. My dad would have had far more faith in me than I had myself. I could never be him. I could never emulate. I could never have that strength. He would have been a natural leader, a born leader. I had to learn. That would not have been natural to me. He was born in either 1880 or 1882. He has two passports. They were brought up in with a very strong hatred of anything to do with England. And his father would have said to him, nothing good ever came from it, not even the wind. That was the east wind came from it. And that was the environment, and there were Fenians and everything else. And he became involved in the IRB very, very early on in everything to do with trying to get rid of the English out of Ireland. The very sight of him was enough for people. And the men would talk about your father. He slept in a ditch there. He was throw the bike across the gate there. That's what I grew up with. I'm just Sean Boylan, the herbalist from Dunboyne. When we were children, we grew up with people calling to the house for a bottle. They were calling for a bottle for the chest, one for osteoarthritis, one for tuberculosis. Another was a kidney and heart condition called dropsy. That's been going on in our family for generations. Now the interesting thing that when we came along and we were kids and we'd have maybe washing bottles because bottles were scarce. You had to sterilise them, you had to write labels. But as a result, without you realising it, you were learning about maybe how to sort of get on with people or whatever it was, and you got an understanding of it.
From all angles, the Meath followers pour into the ground to cheer their heroes as Cavan sporting players say, well done to their conquerors. Attention turns to the stands, where the thousands await the presentation of the cups.
Meath were playing in All-Ireland final in 1949. Out in the front field, it was just across the road from the railway station, and there was a watering tower there, so the trains, there were steam trains, that's where they refueled. So the train pulls in, and all the Meath people hanging out the windows with the green and gold flags. And the couple of us were out in the front field, some of my sisters, Frances and Philo and Gemma, and myself, and we had a ball with us. So the crowd started encouraging us, and of course started soloing with it and jumping up in the air. And the roar of the crowd and so on. And suddenly you realise, gosh, this is something else. This is something special. By the time I was 10, I played under 14 hurling and football, played rugby, drove go-karts, did karate, did boxing, did every blessed thing in the world, loved all sorts of sports. I played for Meath Hurlers from the time I was 17, I was 38, and my final year I was player manager. People said I was mad because I was quite good at other sports as well, but that didn't matter. I just wanted to play hurling and I wanted to play it at the highest level I could in my county, and that was getting picked for Meath Hurlers. And I had a most glorious time. In it, I could get away from it all. Then when I ended up in school and going to Warrenstown, the Agriculture and Horticulture College, it was there that I first realised that my dad was much older than I thought he was. So when I rang home one night from study, I realised the voice of an old man. And that shocked me because I never realised he was like that. And 3/4 of an hour later, having thought about things like in a way I never did before, I was very carefree, always was. Loved the place, loved the college. I just said, look, I'm coming home to give you a hand for a few weeks. And all he said was very good. The only thing secretly I ever wanted to be at that stage was a priest, you see. I knew at the end of the day, this is the road I'm going to go. From day one, I loved the writings, of course, Thomas Merton. I loved the chant, the Vespers and so on. I remember my mother's eldest brother, Father Willie Quinn, he saying to me, he said, Sean, sometimes there are other things you need to do in the world which are more important. And of course he was looking at my father's age and my mother, and there's 5 kids and there's a farm at home and everything else, right? I never told people that I was a budding herbalist. I never said that. It was protecting, minding it in case they might scorn at it or they might laugh at it or whatever. I suppose I was maybe 6 months or a year working at home with Mum and Dad. And there was a confidence grew in me. I never thought people would ever sort of come to see me or that they would ever want to. And suddenly that all started to happen. After my dad died in 71, I went to go back to study. I went back 3 times to study. And I couldn't leave what I was at. It's funny how that's what was to be for you. And what was right was not to stop it, which would have been very, very easy. And we owe more to our heritage than to walk away from it. So imagine losing that knowledge. It should be daft. It'd be absolutely silly. I never had any pretension of the blessed word ever to be a manager. I remember coming towards the end of my playing days, what was I going to do when all this was all over?
I didn't know Sean Boylan.
Did you think?
Did I think that he would do it?
Well, no one take the job. No one wanted the job.
I wouldn't have heard much about it because he was a hard man, and down my part of the county there's no hard.
I don't know whether I had any impression apart from the fact that it was an unusual one.
So I got a phone call from the county board secretary Liam Craven, got me good to him, and Liam rang me said you were nominated for the Meath job. Of course I thought it was the hurling. And no, he said, the football. So you must be joking. No, he said, Sean, I'm serious. Well, are you going to take it? Are you going to go for it? I said, Liam, hang on for a minute. Tell me. Let me in a bit. And it sort of got to me at the time. God almighty, we have to get something from within the county. That's the way it was. And I went to a neighbour of mine, Eamon O'Farrell, and we talked about it. And Eamon said, look, I think you should have a go at it until they get somebody. Had I ever an ambition to be a manager of a Meath team? Never even thought of it. Like, I would never have considered, even though I played a huge amount of football as well as hurling, I would never have thought myself in any way right for that job. You know, I wouldn't have had the credentials and so on. I can't be anybody else but myself. I learned that lesson many, many years ago. I was in Cherry Orchard Hospital seeing a friend of mine. It was a spin the bottle, and whoever the bottle stopped, I had to perform or do something. And it stopped at me. And I went over to a man who had a mouth organ. I asked him, would he mind giving me a loan of it? And I went over to James in the bed. I said, James, how would you like me to play? And he said, Sean, play the men behind the wire. If I was there yet, I couldn't think of it. So I started playing Kevin Barry. Now, I thought it was awful. I thought it was dreadful. But there he was, and he was singing it. And in life, you might be able to do things as good as other people, but don't be afraid not to be as good as other people. Just be yourself and do as best you can.
We'd gone such a period then for years with different managers, and we were going nowhere. So like we were one of those down at heel teams who weren't considered. I don't know whether we ever thought we had a future ourselves. Right, there was a good number of us who had been playing for almost 7 or 8 years when Sean took over. Meath were, you know, maybe 15th, 16th in the country in terms of order at that time. So I don't know whether I think we were sort of a bit like a downtrodden people at the time.
I can remember him standing the very first night that he came in, and the enthusiasm he was showing was unbelievable.
I had absolutely no doubt from the very first night I was in with them, the very first night I had them on a field, that these fellas could play great football. Little did we think that it was going to be what it became.
They're champions in Leinster, and it's to Meath. Meath have won, and Meath are the football champions.
We learned so much as we went along, but because there was no manual per se.
Meath football at the time was at a pretty low ebb. You know, things weren't great.
It takes an awful lot to actually bring you up to the level you say, yeah, we're gonna win All Ireland, so we're gonna win Leinster.
John had a great pride in place and in pride in the county and pride that Meath people were just as good as anybody else and probably better. And Meath at that time was sort of riven with club strife insofar as most people figured the county team is a joke, so we'll concentrate on our clubs. And club games at that time were fairly savage affairs.
The very first night they came in, I just said, lads, I don't care whether you're from Oldcastle or from Dunboyne, from Ballinabrackey or from Laytown. I said, you can beat the living daylights out of each other on a Sunday. Come in to me on a Tuesday night, you're coming in. Yes, you're from where you're from, but you're Meath man, and that's it.
People began to believe in themselves, and that came directly from he being so positive.
The following year then, there was what they called the Centenary Cup. It was the first open draw in the history of the GAA, and Meath won it. It was massive. After that, I felt maybe I've gone as far as I could. Then when the board came to me in September, I said, look, I don't think I should go again. There are things I'd have to do differently.
You had this huge committee to pick the team. There was a big number of selectors at the time. A group of us players got together and urged the county board to give Sean control of the team. Eventually in '85, the change took place. Sean got complete control and the option then to pick his own 2 selectors, and he picked Tony Brennan and Pat Reynolds. That was revolution. That was the same thing as the communist takeover of Russia in 1917. That's the biggest single change that was made in Meath football in that period of time. 85 knocked it on the head. It was a real sickener altogether.
Barely survived in Division 1. Then when it came to the Leinster Championship, Laois bet us 10 points. And suddenly these lads who the previous year were having the backs clapped and so on, became very, very ordinary players in the sight of the supporters. My position was contested, and rightly so.
And the knives are out for him.
You have a hurler looking after them. They're a crowd of old women. They win nothing. They don't want to win anything.
We knew enough about him, having been with him for a couple of years, that this is the only way forward for us. And whatever chance of us having successes in our careers would be to sort of follow blindly this man that we saw as having the sort of vision to bring us forward.
After we were beaten by Laois, I came in home one night, into this room, and 6 of the players were sitting around the table with my mother, God be good to her. Sitting, Gertie made them tea, brown bread, homemade butter, homemade jam. It was gas, because at the end of the night, after the discussion about where we're going, what we're doing, Boylan said, "Will you do something for me?" I said, "What?" "Will you put your shyness in your arse pocket?" And that's what changed me with football. Was I the finished article? Not by any manner of means.
You're always going to have a blip or a slump, and I think that 85 was his.
Sean roused the whole thing again in 86.
And the Leinster final is underway. The experts were saying that it's now or never for this Meath team. They may have been in the doldrums for a long time, but this Meath team has the look of the winner about it. Meath have won! Joe Castles, of course, to come up and receive the cup.
That set us on a course of fun and crack and winning and losing and rows and disputes and just fantastic times.
Everyone wants to see a Croke Park final.
In 87, 78% of the population of Ireland unemployed. So you're in All Ireland final to try and get a ticket. This was gold.
This is a Deanery Championship final underway. Ryan Stockton scored of a point earlier in the match. Really wanted it. It curls to long footed. By David Brady. Forward to Colin O'Rourke. Once again he's through. Once again it's dangerous. Bernard Flynn. It's outside by the goalkeeper. And this time it's in. It's a goal by Colin O'Rourke. Time. There it is. Meath have won the All-Ireland final. They've won their 4th football title here at Croke Park. The first since 1967. A moment of triumph for Mick Lyons and for Meath.
It was probably the most humbling experience of my life. Suddenly, you wouldn't have realised that pent-up frustration that was in people. Here was a chance to let it go, to enjoy something, to share it together. Now I said, because it's 20 years since Meath were in All Ireland, if we win, it said it'll take us 5 hours to go from Clonee to Navan, which is 20 miles away, right? We can't really stop the bus and get out the side of the road. And we turned into Keepack. And there was about 10,000 people there. The Artane Boys band was there. Look, it was just mental. Everybody got burgers and so on. And we just got out to go to the toilet, right? Suddenly, from we all being very ordinary people, you were public property.
By 87, you felt to be a Meath man was you don't lose, you don't take any crap. Anything that's thrown at you, throw back twice as hard. And no matter what the situation was, you're going to win.
Can Meath confirm their position as the best team in the country? A moment when Meath won their first ever 2-in-a-row victory.
Whatever challenges he had, he left them outside the gate of the training facility or the dressing room.
My mum was home from hospital a week, having had a brain operation, the legacy of a car crash. 6 weeks later, she was knocked down. Car never saw her. Back down her head again. Automatically, it was you're helping out with your mother as well as your sister. The constant was, I suppose, that I was home for an awful lot of the time.
See, Sean, at that time, it was like the Orient Express out there, like there was people waiting on Sean in prefabs. And I'm talking about a lot of people. At that time, you didn't have to make an appointment, you just turned up. And you could have 40 people at least waiting on Sean. His mother looking for something else. But he'd see all these people, look after his mother, look after the team, get everything done.
My mother, she died in 1989. And I remember that Christmas Eve afterwards, sitting in the dining room, and I was on my own, and so I started to cry. That realisation for the first time that I could do what I wanted to do. I could go wherever I wanted. Even in the height of all the sport, I would always love to get away from it. And there was a solace I found, because at the back of it all, I still wanted to be a Cistercian monk. I'm coming down from seeing the case up the north. 57 times I was up there. And this person wasn't supposed to live. Between the doctor and what we did, that person turned the corner this particular Sunday morning. And I called into the monastery in Colin. And I went in, and whatever happened that day, I realised, yeah, I need a God, but I need a God in the world. And I was contented then. Within a year, I had met Tina. I never thought I'd get married. I never thought anybody would have me. I would not have had a high opinion of myself. One night, I came in home and she had come in here, and we were chatting all night, and she just said about having, that she had gotten immigration for Australia, and she didn't know what to think about it. And I don't know why I said to her, maybe don't go. I said, what do you mean? She said, maybe stay here with me. Yeah, you're asking me to marry you. I said, think about it. All right, she said. I would have to say I would have been really nervous about getting married.
You got over it though, didn't you?
Yeah, I got over it. Right. We got married the 22nd of December.
I think it was more to do with there's no football on that time than romance.
It's, what does she bring to me? Maybe a life I thought I'd never have.
I don't for 1 minute think Sean Boylan took his eye off the ball when he married Tina. He set the standard of training so tough that a number of fellas walked off, got into their car, and we never saw them again.
Sean had unusual training methods, there's no doubt with that.
We all sort of figured that he was either half mad or fully mad when it came to training, and he punished us a lot. Our training regime was tough.
It was tough. Tara, Gormanstown, the sea, the dunes.
I say staff now. I say Brian, I say he had mental anguish doing it. We started doing a little bit of work on the dunes, but on the beach itself. And when we were finished, I peeled off and I headed straight into the water. They said he's absolutely mad, but at that time of the year, with the turbulence in the sand and in the seas, there's a huge release of sulfur, vitamin, these with manganese. It really helps the tendons to stretch, great for blood vessels. So there was an energy when you came out of that.
In the month of February or March, it didn't feel like that. You felt your willy was going to fall off, but Sean insisted on it.
You hadn't got sort of the gym equipment and all the weights and so on at that particular time. So you had to use all those things of nature People laughed when we went to the Hill of Tara, but that wasn't madness. The energy in Tara is just phenomenal. And when you start doing those laps of Tara, you find the soul within yourself. There's nobody can make you do it.
He always said to me, the guy that gives up here on these hills will give up in a game.
You didn't like running up the Hill of Tara.
No, I didn't.
Neither did I.
I didn't like it. It was very tough to actually train up there.
I think that if you asked most lads, they would say they were so knackered on Tara that they weren't getting any sort of energy from the place or anything like that. There was something about Tara going up there. You had the wind in your face. It was open. You could see for miles. And this was sort of home, part of Meath, part of history, part of our tradition, part of our culture, and something to be proud of. And I think we sort of embraced that.
That feeling of togetherness and that energy, and we all up there. It's a sacred place. The world's your oyster, you know. It's you can live and express yourself and do things you might have thought you might never been able to do, but you do it together. At the end of the All-Ireland 1990, it was, and we finished.
A lot of us at that stage were getting old. There were 4 or 5 of us into our 30s. There was ankle injuries,
Groin injuries, hamstrings, lower back,
knees, backs, hips.
An awful lot of the players were struggling with wear and tear.
We headed down to Gormastown College, and in the college there was this great swimming pool.
Lads were paddling around in a pool in Gormanstown, and I was wondering what the hell was going on.
Some of the training sessions all over the years, the lads were looking at each other as, what the hell is this about? And this was a particularly long period of what's going on here.
What is he coming up with now?
So we go in, the lads put on the buoyancy and we do the training in water. And up to 3 weeks before we played the first round against Dublin, the training with me was all done in water, okay? And people said, stop.
What are we doing here, lads, in the pool? We thought he was mad.
So we were all concerned all the time that Sean was losing it a bit.
Now, there was a lady called Joan Benoit. She won an Olympic marathon in 1988. 6 weeks beforehand, she had an operation on her knee. And she did all the training in water. 10 days before the Olympic marathon, she put her foot on the track. She had done all the training in water, and I heard about it. Anyhow, I remember after the training session, we're in the car and we're driving out the gates of Gormastown College, and Jerry turned to me and he said, do you mind me asking you something? How are you going to face the people of Meath next June when you're beating the first round of Leinster and people say, how did the training go? We were swimming. I said, Jerry, we'll be all right.
Like, that was so forward thinking, never even ran around the field. And if you look back on the 91 games again Dublin, not one of us was there with cramp or whatever else, and they were going there left, right and centre. So
after Italian 90, everyone had thought that soccer would take over, the GA is dead. Suddenly you had this unique challenge between two neighbouring counties. After the third match, County Board said, you want to go out with the team for a few days? And I went round all the lads, most of the lads were married. And I said to the wives, listen, I said, would you mind if I took the lads away for a couple of days? Shawnee, anything to beat the Dubs, that's the way it was.
Now, we were 1 week from the biggest game of our lives. And the next thing we were told, get ready, on Friday evening we're heading for Drimmen, I think it was, in Scotland. Wives, girlfriends, the whole lot. And it definitely was the biggest drinking session I was ever involved in. And the crack was fantastic on the Friday night.
We had a great night and the whole tension broke, and there was music, but the lads who were smart knew, we're going to train tomorrow.
And It got to the point at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning where there was no drink left in the hotel, and went out the next day and tried to train, and we weren't really able to train very well, but we came back on Sunday totally refreshed.
What we didn't know was at home that they had sports psychologists on the radio. Different experts are saying this is madness. When they come back, their attention will be gone and so on. And they were probably right with a normal group of fellas, but these weren't a normal group of guys anyhow. And you might say, was it a daft thing to do? It was the right thing to do.
Road could be in trouble there now. Road back in the action.
We're rising the lead of victory up here. You can't give a good lead team down. It's a goal! It's to get a lot of poor marking by Boylan. And it's coming down. It's going to be one to the heart. The ball in. They're going. They've won it. League have won by a point. It's an amazing win. It's taken 4 games to finally resolve a match that grabbed the nation's attention.
That sense of relief when it was over, it was, honest to God, you nearly wanted jump leads to pick you back up again.
Teams of the 80s and 90s and that would be accused of being, bothering on dirty or whatever, which is very hard to reconcile with the man.
People would say that I wasn't a good man with controversy.
I think about the best thing that would have been said for them was that they were a gang of thugs or those dirty bastards.
I would have been known to have a short fuse, and sometimes the fuse would be lit, and Sean would know that, and he'd say you got to work on it. I hated to let him down.
I think what he wanted to see from us was honesty of effort, tough but fair, give in to nobody, never complain. That was a big thing. Do not go down if you're not hurt. Do not go down. Even if you are hurt, do not go down and show the other person that you're hurt.
But there was a natural aggression in quite a lot of the team, and there were a lot of big, strong, fit, healthy fellas, and that's the way we played it at club level, and it was just an extension of that. But Sean never, not once, did I ever hear him say, you need to get stuck into that fella, you need to take that fella out. That certainly never was mentioned.
Sean would never say a bad thing about his players. He would defend them to the hilt.
Regardless of what
went on.
When we had a dreadful game or done something really stupid or something.
Or people thought that the team went over the top or whatever. He would never let his team down. So. So.
I don't know what's in me, but I was never interested in the blame. I was always interested in what can we do.
Having come from the walk of life that I come from, we'd been herbalists. You know what I mean? You were the local witch doctor. But when it came in the sporting world, I would never have read articles about myself. And at the same time, I understood when they would have a go at you and everything else. Some of the things over the years, some things were not nice that were written. And would I like my children now to read it? I probably wouldn't. At the same time, somebody wrote it. Okay, and once it's written, it's there. But that doesn't mean that they have that power over me for the rest of my life.
The team in the 80s were kind of like a little bit rough around the edges, that type of way. I think we were a bit more refined, but we were nicer fellas. Yeah, maybe. And I think going into 96, Sean kind of got a new lease of life. In 1987-88, he was kind of like a big brother to the lads because he had inherited a lot of that team, the mainstays in that team. But when he built us from 96, we were very young, so he actually had to act like a father figure. He was putting the arm around the shoulder, and that's what I needed at the time as a young lad coming in.
It was the only thing he wanted to do was play for the Meath senior team under Sean Boylan. You saw the type of players that Sean was picking, Like if you weren't competitive, if you weren't hard working.
That's what gave me hope. He was picking lads on competitive, not skill.
Even just to get in and to play under Sean Boylan and to play with some of the older guys that had won All Ireland, it was fantastic, and it was probably a dream come true for just to be in the dressing room and just listen to him talk, and you're probably just saying, like, I'm finally here, isn't this great? Like,
we earned the win, being competitive for the ball, and that was it. Like, Sean made us want to win that ball every moment of every game. It wasn't something that we were naturally born with.
And what a team those lads became, you know what I mean? Great times.
Here he comes from Meath. And over the bar. Meath's mentor is there on the sideline.
And it's a great tribute to their stubbornness, their tenacity, their refusal to wilt.
It goes to a replay. Sean Boylan, who's been 14 years in charge of the Meath senior footballers. Delighted Meath fans up there at Hill 16. Here's Trevor Giles against Devon, and a brilliant penalty. That was terrific skill by Trevor Giles. Still the breeze back in Meath, playing in the goal in the second half. And Matt Holmes, free taken very quickly. Tommy down here, tripped, and the referee allows it, I think, and it's all over. Meath have won the All-Ireland. Sean Boylan takes, and it's to Meath, and it's to Tommy down. The fans are celebrating. It's been a terrific day for Meath.
On the pitch after a match is a combination of all that expression that people would have given everything all through the years, and it's just there. That emotion is just, it's staggering what it does, and it's indelible. It just stays with you. The most emotional thing that happened to me, I've never spoken about it before, was in 1996 when we got back as far as Keepack, and this young squad had won the All-Ireland, and I just broke down. And I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried. And there was more than football attached to it. And it was because it was like, I won't say repaying a debt, but it was a justification of the faith in me in the first place. So that moment, I will never forget it. And all the things that happened to me.
Murphy, right knee very heavily struck, good ball inside. Kelly fisting it over the bar. And it means now it's a free from where it's a huge ball inside there. Coach Graham Kennedy broke it down towards Ollie Murphy. And Ollie Murphy! They hatch a plan to win Meath's 7th All-Ireland final victory. They've got the scent of victory in their nostrils. Sean Boylan has another great day to look back on.
It's found a lot of depth in themselves today. We're immensely proud.
Even the football champions. Sam goes down the road to the Royal County. John McDermott celebrates. They celebrate. It's been a great last 15 years really for me. Sean Boylan at the helm throughout all those years.
Well, the spirit is influenced by just one man, that's Sean Boylan. Without him, there'd be no spirit in this team.
I've been there 23 years. I was a very, very young squad coming through, and I felt that huge potential. A lot of people felt, well, he's there an awful long time, it's time to go, and so on. And thought long and hard about it. And I went to the county board, and I just said, lads, I feel that I need 2 years to do what I want to do, so that you won't have the breakdown, so it's like the you know, everything that you've built up. And I said, it'd be like the fall of the Roman Empire if we don't do that. And I would like to bring somebody with me and after 1 year I will step aside and they will become the Meath manager. And I said, and in 2 years you'll have a title. And I said, I know you're not going to do it for me. And it didn't work out. Was I disappointed? In many ways I was very relieved. In other ways it was like a wake without a corpse. And did I miss it hugely? Absolutely hugely. But did I crave it? No, I didn't. And did I resent anybody else coming in having a go at it? Not for a moment. I mean, not for a moment. From the very first time Barry came in, I was at the first O'Byrne Cup match with my sons. And I was saying to them, were they saying the same thing about me as they're saying about Eamon? Worse steady, you know what I mean? But that's the way life goes.
Probably the biggest fright I got in our marriage was when Sean was diagnosed with a tumour in 2008.
Went for an annual checkup for a knee injury, and a few days before my appointment was due, I pulled a muscle. So I rang the consultant that I was to go and see, and you know, Lisa said to me, he's like, come on, he'll see you. And he decided that he'd have a scan. And for the first time in 16 years, Tina came with me. And he threw his arms around herself and around Tina and around myself. And he said, look, we think we have a problem. We think you have a tumour. Tina, naturally being a lot younger than I am, and 6 young kids, the eldest was 16, the youngest wasn't even 5. It was a huge shock.
I was extremely upset at the time, you know, because I had an awful fear maybe that Sean was going to die. So it really, really was. It was a very, 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 very difficult time.
I still wanted to be around for as long as I could with the best quality of life that I could have, and make things as, you know, as good or as right for my family. But maybe it was a way of teaching me a little bit more as well. It can be frightening in one way, and it changed my whole life. I was short, I was snappy, my muscles started to waste, so suddenly a lot of the power and energy I had was going. Like, I was like somebody who was premenstrual, I was like somebody who was menopausal, so it was some change. Now, I'd gone through an awful lot with sport, and I would have had a very, very good temperament. But when you have to say to your, you know, to Oran or to Eve or to Darren when they were very young, look, don't mind if I'm a bit snappy. The first time it's not so bad, or the second. Then you're just a contrary outfit. Do you understand? But never handled it out Tina. She was just amazing. And yet, it was only that realisation afterwards. It was like a delayed shock hit me when everything was over and I'd made this extraordinary recovery, this extraordinary flexibility and movement again. I had nothing left in the world mentally.
You go into the dark night of the soul. That's where Sean was. Now, any monk knows. When you go in there, how you come out. You know, you head along the shadow of the valley of death. That's where he was.
I remember one morning I live in a big house. The whole place was coming in on top of me. I had to get outside. Trying not to disturb Tina, thinking she didn't know. She knew all along. Do you know what I mean?
He's the man. So, I knew he'd come out of it, you know, I knew he'd come out of it. And he came out of it. We had another sing song, away we went again. That is the greatest learning experience that Sean ever had.
But suddenly, you just appreciate sort of having each other.
He is exactly how he, you know, appears. The man you meet is the man we meet, it's the man anybody meets. If you're having a really bad day, he's going to be the one to put his arm around you and be your dad at the end of the day. And I think that's the way he's always been, really, and it's never...
Well, as long as you're happy.
I remember coming back and going for a scholarship exam for Warrenstown Agricultural College. I'm coming home and my dad meeting me off the bus. And he put his arm around me. There was a tear in his eye.
You realise somebody that you mean a lot to them and they mean a lot to you.
I couldn't believe I meant that much to him. Wow, never forget that.
It's amazing the confidence that it gives you. But in fact, my dad, he was probably a natural leader. I had to learn to be a leader.
Sean was just an inspiring man. He gave you a lot of self-belief and self-confidence to go on and do great things.
He would have been one of the most important people who influenced our own lives individually and collectively. And I think he made people feel good about themselves. And he made us be something that maybe we thought we'd never be.
He probably brought me out of my shell a lot more than I would have been, because I was quite shy as a young fella.
When he was talking to you, you kind of, you felt you were the only person that mattered.
He gave you the potential that anything is possible.
Yeah. He was kind of like I'd say a father figure really. He was in the limelight for different reasons, and you know, if you were doing something wrong, you know, put the hand on the shoulder, bring you to one side, maybe bring you for a walk up the top of the field and have a chat about different things that were going on.
I owed Sean Boylan a lot more than 2 All-Ireland medals. I had not a whole lot of values growing up. Didn't apply myself at anything, you know what I mean? And Sean probably was aware of this, and he developed values in me.
Am I still shy? Am I confident? In many ways, I would have. I'd have a trust that I'd say the right thing, or I'd do the right thing. I would, yeah. I'd have that trust.
Thank you very much, Sean Boylan. Well done.
I think he had to bring himself out there because he probably, well, he did know that if he didn't bring himself out there, he wouldn't be able to help people like me.
And if you can meet 2 or 3 people like that in your life, you're doing very well.
It's been an extraordinary journey and a wonderful journey, and I never thought it was anything else but what I am. You have to be that, you have to be true to yourself. Have I a load of qualifications and degrees? No, I haven't. Am I what you call a highly educated man? Academically, you wouldn't say I am. But I know that I have been blessed, that I've been able to cross many divides. That makes me who I am. I was a bit like a jack of all trades and a master of none, but I never wanted to be master of anything. I just wanted to be, whatever I did, I wanted to do it right. I never had the potential in the world, never had a notion in the world. Just an extremely happy man. It's hard to quantify, but that's the person I am. Simple out, and all happy out, blessed, lucky. Still feel there's thousands of things I want to do, and I know I still would have dreams and lost them. But the things like anger, some vexations, some frustrations and vexations, they're part of life. That's when you don't lose the run of it. So I'd like to think I'm a man with a fair bit of balance, and I've been lucky enough to be that. And it's great, it's lovely. That's a long answer, Lord Jesus. That's Jesus Christ. Am I standing for president now?
Brush song, take one.
There's a little song I wrote for Sean. If you're weary, feeling depressed, or maybe got a troubled mind, get yourself a bottle from the herbalist in Dunboyne. There isn't any cure that I know or elixir you can find. So get yourself a bottle from the herbalist in Dunboyne. I don't know how that juice is made, man, it sure tastes fine. Telling you it ain't no lemonade, stuff the brewing in Dunboyne. I knew a man who was beyond all help. Everybody said he was dying, but he danced on his grave after a bottle of tonic. I want to tell you, it made them bionic. Get yourself a bottle from the herbalist in Dunboyne. Hey, that could be a hit, that. Hold on. Thank you.
We would have the dirt on Sean, Davey and myself, you know. Sean and fast cars.
Fast cars.
And fast women.
That's a different documentary.
It's a different documentary. We'll have it, if you want to do a documentary on that, we support you on that one.
Some concentration for this, you know. Actually.